Yeah, hopefully everything's showing up okay. Hopefully audio's synced. All those kinds of things. I think, at least I hope, I'll put it that way. I hope I have fixed. I went back and I looked at last week's stream, and good God, I realized how bad like the camera and color and everything was looking. It was driving me up the wall because the new webcam I have should be significantly better than the really old webcam I had, but it looked way worse. But hopefully it like looks not like some weird washed out colorified whatever it was image, because it looked terrible. It almost looked like I had like a bad filter on it. I don't know. It's like so weird. But yeah, happy Tuesday, everybody. Or I guess was it 2 weeks ago's video? Whatever. Recent video. Recent live stream. Oh, man. So, it's been a couple weeks. I got kind of sick over the weekend. That was fun. Had a little stomach bug, and yeah, it was not fun. It was not fun at all. But feeling a lot better today, so that's nice. Now my wife is sick though, so it's like right as I was starting to feel better, she started to feel bad. It's like, ugh, this is bad days for the house. But got to do. I've been doing a bunch of work that is YouTube related. So hopefully that will bring some cool stuff along. I have some projects in the works that I can't go into much detail yet, but some stuff that I'm trying to get figured to see if just some different things can occur. We'll put it that way. I tried going through the army of like collaboration emails that I get, which is to say, I get a lot of emails for like cheap, different Amazon products, and oh man, it's kind of a nightmare. Like the weirdest things that get sent to me. At some point, I'll probably have to do a video where I just like go over all of them, or maybe even like go, yeah, I'll make a video about your product, and then do like all of them in like 30 seconds a piece in one video. Just be like, here's all the weird stuff that Chinese sellers try to send any given YouTube channel to advertise. Once you get over like 10 or 20,000 subscribers, it's just like, just please take our like $16 thing and then make an entire video get dedicated to it. Like, I don't know. It's so rare to get ones that are actually like related to Aquarium product, which drives me nuts. But let's get into our topic. In light of our Aquarium 911 series, I've got a new Aquarium 911, and it's a little different because it's not necessarily a problem. It's a setup question. And I find setup questions like this kind of fun because I feel like they're great. They're great experiments, so to speak, about like our thought process and why we put tanks together for whatever reason it may be. So let me get into Alan's email. I'm so enjoying and listening to your YouTube broadcasts. I need help. I have a 24-inch cube, so it's 24 by 24 by 24. I have been purchasing various substrates as I found them on sale. I have a fluval stratum at 27 pounds, the Aquarium shrimp and plant, 10 pounds, fluorite red, 30 pounds, Echo Complete, 20 pounds, and a 20-pound bag of 2 to 4 millimeter gravel to top it off. I was thinking of starting with a 1/2 inch to 1 inch layer of raised bed soil with no additives. So already we are talking about some type of dirted tank, Walstad-esque kind of aquarium. This is where some complication occurs. To go back to the email, I know this will not be a true Walstad tank, but I thought that the soil could be helpful. I have an 850 Awaze canister filter found in liquidation store at a ridiculous price. That's always good, because Awaze is typically my biggest gripe about Awase is they are kind of expensive for what you're getting. They have a lot of great features, and they are, in general, or at least in my personal experience with my Awase, a pretty great filter. But they are very expensive. they have like as much price point or more as like an FX6, but way less like power and capacity, right? So it's kind of one of those things where it's like, Zach is saying I like the integral heater. The heaters can be nice. You could also completely melt yours because of the integrated heater. If you don't like, some people get, I've seen this more than a few times, the horror stories where people forget to turn off the heater when they're doing service. And since the water's not flowing, it then gets super hot and it like melts the top of their canister. And if they don't pay enough attention, it will melt it so bad that the canister is basically rendered null and void and no longer functions. So there is that kind of risk. You have to be very careful. What I have found to be most effective is for people to put both the filter's pump and the heater on a Wi-Fi controllable switch or some other kind of switch where when you click off for one, it turns both off, right? That way, no matter what, every time you're turning off the filter itself, you're turning off both filter and heater so that you're never making that mistake during service. Anyway, we'll go back in the email. It works with most of the latest upgrades. I call Awase to check the number to see if it was an upgraded model. It is the latest US model. The tank will have overfiltration, I guess. I mean, yes and no in that it's overfiltered. I really don't believe in the like overfiltration. There's not really a thing. The difference to me is like whether it's too much flow for the fish you want to have to handle or not enough, right? You could, in theory, have underpowered filtration, but if you have a bunch of plants, that usually can make up for it. So, as deep as the tank is, should I invest in a Fluval 3.0 or similar upgraded light? Okay, so we're kind of asking about light on top of substrate here. Being on a budget, I'm trying to make dollars go as far as I can by buying what I can on sale. I hope this makes an acceptable tank. All wise one. Oh, I don't know about that part. I don't know about that all wise one thing. Can I put this collaboration of sale items together for a successful aquarium? I was thinking of using the dark start method to cycle the tank. And then here's some extra bonus information that Alan sent a little later. I meant to include my tap water parameters. KH is 2 degrees or 36 ppm. GH is 3 degrees or 54 ppm. 0 ammonia, 0 nitrite, 0 nitrate, and a pH of 6.6. I'm planning on stocking the tank with a school of rummy nose rasboras. Whoa, we're getting a little fancy with the rasbora variant. It's a really cool fish, though, and I think they're starting to get a lot more love. A school of rummy nose tetras. Alan, right here. Why are we doing rasboras and tetras that look kind of the same? Why don't we just get a bigger group of one? You know what I'm saying? Like I want some contrast. Because I've got two fish that kind of look the same, and the only difference is really their body and maybe their schooling behavior. Yeah, that doesn't feel as interesting because you could have a bigger school of either of those two fish and get slightly closer to their more natural behaviors because they exist in such large quantities in the wild. It's just food for thought. Or maybe turn those rummy nose tetras into something like an emperor tetra or just a neon tetra even, right? Get something that's got a little contrast in its coloration that it helps each fish pop a little more. It's my personal thought. If we're going to mix some stuff up, let's mix some stuff up. But if you really want that like rummy nose look, pick one and just get a bigger number. Personal taste. But your aquarium, do what you want to do. Just you and me. All right? Okay. 3 auto catfish. Love autos. 3 Amano shrimp, 1 hillstream loach, and 1 or 2 special fish. Several question marks follow that. Maybe. Heavy planted with some sand for a pathway and a beach. Which you have in a 24 by 24 tank, right? You've got a big footprint to make some interesting aquascaping choices and decisions. So I like that. Okay. I'm going to go with a few... Before we talk about like how can you put this substrate together to make this tank work, which you could, and you could do it in a number of different ways, right? I'm going to ask you one fundamental question. We have a number of different aqua soils. Why do we need dirt? Chat, feel free to kick in on this one. And here's some of my thought process of why I'm asking, why do we need dirt? We already have a bunch of aqua soil. This is already going to have a natural bunch of nutrients inside of it. Plus, it has that high cation exchange capacity to help pull some of the nutrition that we put in, if we're putting in fertilizer or even just fish poo, etc., that will transfer some of the nutrition down into the substrate itself, right? So we don't necessarily need the dirt to add extra nutrition. Also, because we're not immediately doing like a sand cap over the dirt, we're trying to do a number of different substrates that aren't as fine-grained as sand, which is why we do a cap usually in a Walstad style or a dirted tank. We have a risk of that dirt getting up into the water column and causing just like the craziest mess known to man. So my thought is this: I think you can do just fine with just the other substrates and skip the dirt entirely. Dirt is cheap. Dirt is effective. That's why a lot of people use it in collaboration with sand to help make sure that nothing gets up into the water column, to keep lots of nutrition present for the plants that we plant into that sand, because normally sand being very inert prevents you from having that nutrition at the root level when we're planting a lot of our plants. So my first thought is just skip the dirt. Now, if the concern is you won't have a thick enough layer of substrate, you don't need the crazy thick layer of substrate depending on the plant selection you choose. So let me give you some examples here. If you're not using things like crypts and swords and aponogetons, and depending on, there are certain crypts where even this doesn't matter, you don't need a super deep layer of substrate. You just need enough to plant something into it. If you've got mostly water column feeders like stem plants or epiphytes, they actually don't care that the substrate, and we'll use large quotations because we're using a bunch of different things here, we won't care that that substrate is even present. We're pulling all our nutrition out of the water column for the most part anyway. The substrate is just there, usually to anchor us in place, and we're going to form some roots, but it's not that necessary. And now from an aquascaping perspective, it helps make sure that you can get your aquascape put together. Now, if we're using some deeper root feeders, maybe we want to use a sword or two, I can see where you might want to build up some substrate, but instead of buying that dirt, or maybe you're getting free dirt, but you're talking about topsoil specifically, which makes me think you're going to go to a hardware store or a gardening supply store and buy a bag, right? You could just get a thing of like the small lava rock that they use for topping instead of bark in garden beds, and put a small amount of that down to help raise that substrate up and naturally elevate. And because it's larger and more porous, that will also help prevent a little bit of the compaction down at the very bottom of your substrate. There's a few other things we could do here. There's some other like interesting techniques with like egg crate and things like that, to where you can help raise things up. You could even look at doing something like a underground filter or a plenum. You pick which terminology you want. They're the same freaking thing. It's a bunch of plates that the substrate set on top so that you create a void underneath the water, and you have some amount of water movement that pulls through there. Think similar to my now guppy tank that was my former Anoxic experiment tank, right? It pulls all sorts of nutrition down in through the down through the roots, slowly but surely. It's helpful. Necessary? Nope. Helpful? Very. So, now we've gotten past that part. Let's go over the substrate you have present and talk about what kind of things we could do with this, and can we put it together? The end answer is of course you can. You've got a bunch of substrate. You just slap it in the tank and go. It'll work. But let's talk about ways that we can do this. So you've got one bag of stratum, a little bit of the Aquarium shrimp and plant, which is pretty similar. You've got fluorite red, which is quite a bit different, but it's going to give you lots of iron, which is nice. You've got Echo Complete, and then you've got a bunch of gravel that you want to use kind of as a top, as a decorative, right? So my thought is this. I would take the fluorite red, and if you don't want that color to be present toward the top, I would leave that as my base layer of substrate. I would just spread it out evenly. Now you've got this nice even distribution of a very iron-rich substrate at the very base of the roots. So if you do choose to use anything like crypts, they're going to be able to get their roots down in there and get that little extra iron that they freaking love. Hi, puppy. You won't come? Puppy's in a cone, so she might be a little louder when she shakes and wiggles. Yeah, she's having a little trouble with her ears, getting a bunch of gunk in them. She's got an appointment Saturday to get looked at by the doc. She doesn't like the trip there, but usually she's happy when it's all said and done. Anyway, back on track. So I would put that on the bottom layer personally. Now, if you like the way the look is, that would lead me to think you don't care as much about the decorative gravel. And given that you've talked about like that 2 to 4 millimeter gravel, I think that's your goal is for that to be what's shown on top. So I'd go fluoride on the bottom, Echo Complete on top of that, the rest of the aqua soils, and gravel over the top. Because here's the thing. You don't need a super thick layer of aqua soil, or in the case of dirted tanks, very similar, you don't need a lot of dirt. You just need enough present to bring a bunch of nutrition in and make sure that as water moves through that substrate, it has the ability to do cation exchange, right? And since we're putting decorative gravel over the top, is my guess based on what you're telling me here, you're going to have extra layers of relatively fine, like 2 millimeter, 4 millimeters, pretty good size, that'll help hold plants down. So really, you don't need a super thick layer of nutrition-based substrate underneath it. I think you've got more than enough. You can kind of lasagna this thing, right? And then break everything over the top and have a nice, pretty tank. And then, of course, you said you want to have some sanded areas. You just put the sand right over the top. Easy peasy. Whips World, you don't want to plant into the aqua soil, though, right? No, you can plant directly into the aqua soil depending on the plant. If you get, like, as an example, if you get crypts from someone who's local, so they naturally have a much bigger root system than, say, when you buy them potted, it's okay to grab that entire root system and plant that as deep as you can to where the plant is just coming out of the gravel, but the roots are nice and deep, right? That's okay. The thing that can harm roots is if there's not enough oxygen down in the deeper layers of the substrate, which is where we would look at doing something like an undergravel filter or a plenum, pick your poison as far as they're concerned, in order to create that void and create extra water movement down through the substrate, because that brings that oxygenation through it. And aqua soil typically is not potent enough, as Stephen P. is mentioning, with it doesn't have enough ammonia in it to cause like burning levels, if that makes sense. There are some like hyper nitrate rich soils that could do that, but those aren't typically things that we use in aquariums. That's stuff that's used in like very fine amounts mixed in, like how you would mix in manure or something like that into some kind of larger scale crop growing, right? Where you're using crazy fertilizers and all that nonsense. We're not seeing that kind of stuff in an aquarium. So that's all those things, right? Let's talk light for a second. Light is going to depend 100% on the tank. And what I would say, and even Whitman mentioned this in chat, you can buy a light used. Honestly, the Fluval lights, I've had my Plant Pros running for a little over 5 years at this point. A couple of the Plant Pros that I have, I got as soon as they were available in the United States. Basically, as soon as I could possibly buy them, I had them on tanks. And they've been running like a charm. They're very well built. So you could get a used one, and as long as you test it ahead of time to make sure it's okay, you would be fine like that, right? Do you need that? No. Because what really matters is, what plants are we selecting? Because if we're selecting plants that all need very high light, then we might need a more powerful light. But if we're doing lots of like Java Fern and Crypts, Swords, all your kind of like easier plants, and maybe have a few stems, but they're like Ludwigia and Pogostemon stellatus octopus, some of the easy stems, or Hygrophila, right? Like Willow Hygro, they don't need crazy high light. You really only need about medium-ish light, and you can get that with even like an Aqua Sky. I'll have a video coming out relatively soon. I'm still doing some testing and stuff, but like the Aqua Sky 3.0, on a 40 breeder at 50% puts out a surprising amount of light. If you're low light as far as your plants are concerned, that thing at 50% looks really good and is putting up plenty of light. Now, I don't know the par readings. I'm trying to get a hold of my club's par meter, and I think I might be too far down the list. It might take a while, but we'll see. But it's got plenty of light. You don't necessarily need it. You also could look at something like, I think there are still some of the last of the Aquarium co-op lights are still kind of available for sale. I don't know if these got them on the website. I know that in the store they were. Pretty recently, I saw several of them. The last ones are still available sale. They put out a great amount of light. You don't need a ton of light if you're not selecting plants that aren't very high demand. Now, if you're trying to do like Ludwigia White and Ludwigia Tornado and all these like really crazy high demand plants, that's a different story. But from what I'm reading in your email, I don't think you're going for high demand plants. I think you're going for some very simple stuff, something that just is easy on you, but looks good and is easily maintainable. That's what I personally would do because I'm a little lazy. I don't want to like have to work my like 45-ish an hour a week job and then come home and do another 20 hours of just tank maintenance, right? I don't have that kind of time anymore. So I tend to pick things that grow in a more relaxed pace or are more controllable and easier because it lets me build a very nice looking tank with a lot less work. Food for thought. So if you're not doing really crazy things, even though you have a 24-inch tall tank, you don't need a crazy amount of light because if you're mostly low and medium light requirements, you can pull that off with a number of lights that aren't terribly expensive. And you really can go to a more like budget-friendly light, like some of the Hygers that are out there and things like that. They're fine lights. The big thing is they're not quite as controllable. Maybe they don't have as long as a warranty. They don't have the ability to like be accidentally dropped into the water for a period of time without those blowing apart on you, things like that. But the question is like, where do we want to put our budget? Because in my experience, a lot of cheap lights, after a year or two, they dim down because the LED quality isn't as good. And you find yourself replacing them more often, or you struggle with other problems because maybe they're not as controllable. And you put it on the tank and you're like, great, I've got this good light. And it turns out it's way too bright for what your tank needs. And if you can't control it and dim it back down, now you run into problems with algae. Where a light that maybe would only cost a little bit more money, maybe you save up for an extra month before you start putting this thing together or whatever the heck your budgeting is, will allow you to get a more controllable, better quality light that's a little more durable, lasts longer, the better level of control, etc., etc. Do you need the most powerful light? No. So many planted tanks that most of us are creating really have surprisingly simple requirements when it comes to their lighting. So it becomes more about getting a light that has the level of control that allows us to play with it a little bit and have a little fun, as I like to call it, because I like tinkering with lights because I'm a psycho. But you want that level of control so that if you encounter problems, maybe that you're seeing the plants get a little too leggy, they're reaching for light. Well, you want to be able to turn the light up just a little bit at a time until you find that sweet spot that isn't causing a bunch of algae, but is giving the plants what they need. You're getting a ton of algae, you want to dial that light down so you can get rid of that algae and still give the plants what they need. These things I feel like are the most important aspects of when we're doing our light selection. Stephen P. People who sell non-dimmable aquarium lights, straight to jail. I agree with that. I want lights that dim with significantly better. Like I'm getting to a point now of where if your light dims at 10% at a time, that's not enough, and you're straight to jail in my book. There's so much modern technology out there. Stop being cheap. Light manufacturers, stop being cheap. Corey, I'm going to talk to you for a second. I know you're trying to get a new light. I know, and I did like the last one. I swear to Fish Jesus himself, L.R. Bretts, right? If you make that thing go at 10% intervals again, I'm going to come. We're going to talk. I'm going to have some not nice words for you. I feel like at this day and age, where with how cheap hardware is, I better be able to control it at least in like 5% intervals. Realistically, I want 1%. I better be able to dial that bad boy down to the percent as much as I want. And I know lights could do more, but 1% is good enough. I've been doing a bunch of playing with the Aqua Sky 3. Big improvement. Big improvement from the two. It is, despite being a single row of LEDs, some of the changes they made to the LEDs to prevent that level of yellow cast, that warm cast a lot of people don't like, it's gone. Raw lumen output significantly increased. Same power draw, 27 watts on a 36-inch light. It's very nice. I've been liking it a lot in what I have tested. There's some things that need some fixes, but yeah. Anyway, Alan, I hope that helps. If not, get back to me via email. I'll send you this live stream so you can watch this in full, send you a short email, all that kind of stuff. But hopefully that helps. When you do get your tank set up and you get it rolling, send me a picture. I want to see it. Look forward to it. All right. Gang, at this point, we'll go full open questions. Shoot me whatever you want. At Billy Pasco makes it super easy to see them all. You know the usual. We're here. We're doing this thing. It's very hot as far as Washington is concerned right now. Compared to most of you, though, I'm sure you're like, boy, that is cool. But it's hot for the Seattle area today. It's in the 90s. Seattle doesn't do that very often. What is the sky blue? What? You mean the aqua sky? Geek, what are you on? Is water really wet? That's one of them government conspiracies, man. They're just trying to confuse you. I don't have the pre-prep to like do the deeper gravelly voice. I can't get it into that true conspiracy nut voice. You know who I'm talking about. I normally mix aqua soil and fluorite to have a thinner lasagna method. Yeah, I've mixed all sorts of things. I've literally mixed them together. I've done lasagna methods. I tend to prefer like the lasagna method in general, just because it's easier to set up, and two, I've found that depending on what I mix together, certain things naturally over time like slowly separate themselves when I'm messing with them, and then it defeats the purpose of mixing it all together a little bit. Or you'll have like pockets that are not mixed and other pockets that are mixed. It causes some level of havoc, and that it just makes me like want to bash my head on the wall sometimes. I'm like, why did I waste all the time doing this thing when it's just going to separate and not matter? But what I found in general is I really like my two probably favorite substrates are the Brightwell Rio Oscuro and Fluval Stratum. Those are my two favorite, and I tend to mix them with something else. My go-to has almost always been Echo Complete. I like the granule size in it. I like the little like pre-bacterial starter that's supposed to be in it, but mostly it's about the coloration and granule size. I like the way it is as kind of like a center layer, because it helps when I'm planting a lot of certain plants. That tends to help grip them down if I don't have a finer version like the akin of Amazonia powder that used to exist as my top layer for certain like tricky plants. But there are like things that have really shallow root structures. Think something like Monte Carlo and some of those like really small carpenter plants. That won't help you anyway. But I've had some plants that usually it's stems that are missing roots where it's trimmings, that if I can push them a bit deeper and get into a like thin layer of Echo Complete, I've just found they stay in place better. Maybe it's just when I wasn't doing that method, I wasn't as skilled at planting, so I didn't realize like I need to do certain things, and plants would naturally kind of float up more on me as opposed to how they do now, where I'm skilled at this quotation marks and it doesn't happen as often. I don't know. I don't know. Vibes. Oh, what's up, buddy? Good to see you. It's been a bit. My wife finally found a house she likes in San Diego. Now it's paperwork since we're living in Singapore. Oh, San Diego, eh? My only problem with California as a whole is I know parts of California the cost of living is not as atrocious, but because I work in tech, I'm used to like mostly the Bay Area where it's like a cardboard shack is $1 million home. It's kind of ridiculous there. But also just because you have both state and state income and sales tax, it's like and there's a lot of other like problems in the government right now where they just restrict building of extra homes to make it actually possible for most people to live there. It's pretty rough. Oh, Bellevue, if you're talking about Bellevue, Washington, yeah, Bellevue is absolutely nuts. Like I grew up in Kirkland, Washington, which now I could not possibly afford a home there. I grew up there, and when I grew up there, it was like mostly kind of the edge of middle class. It was mostly like lower and middle portions of middle class. You had a lot of like simple working people. Nowadays, it's like all people who make a ridiculous amount of money. And yeah. The house that I grew up in does not exist anymore. It got bulldozed, and they put up a bunch of these like super ugly things that they just look like those like modern square box houses. You know what I'm talking about? Where they don't even look like a house anymore. They look like a freaking office building. And I remember when they got them all built, where 2.5 houses used to be, because they bought a portion of land that was in the back of these 2 houses, mine and the neighbor. They put 5 up, and each of those 5 houses was like from the upper 900,000s, and this was 12 years ago. At this point, I was like, "What the? How can you possibly live there?" And that's before house prices went even as crazy as they did during like the pandemic. It's just ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. We chose San Diego to be close to family. Hey, I've heard good things of San Diego. I think the biggest thing I've heard is like just don't be on the boardwalk itself, because that's kind of gone bad. But otherwise, it's kind of nice. I can hear one of my other dogs whining because she can't see her sister, because her sister is taking a nap by my feet. Make sure I didn't miss something. Yeah, vibes. I get it. Life gets busy, man. I've been crazy busy. I haven't been able to do as much as I want to do. It's been a wild one. Work has been a little extra nuts. Whip. I'd make it 10% just on principle now if I were Corey. Bluff called. I mean, the problem is he doesn't really go to his store very often anymore during like normal hours, so it's not like I can randomly run into him and scream at him. You gotta understand. Most people are non-confrontational. I, on the other hand, camera like just freaked out. Sorry about that. I'm watching my preview over here because of my chat window and my broadcast software somewhere. My camera's like wigged the F out. Hopefully that doesn't look too bad on your guys' end. But I like confrontation. Not in the sense of like I like picking fights, although sometimes I do. But usually that's when like people say really dumb things that are just factually incorrect. That's what I like to pick fights, which is basically why I don't do politics ever, because I would lose my mind, because we know how that is. Right? We know how that is. Zach, I'm designing a self-storage building in Santa Monica that has apartments as part of it. Weird combo. Actually, no, I don't think that's bad at all, right? Because your storage requirements inherently want you to have basically people nearby. Like, my thought is this, right? If you have apartments up top, but you have storage right there, how effectively ideal is it for your people living above the storage facilities to just use your storage? Because you're right there. Especially if you have some kind of discount for the people that like live in those apartments. Which also, Zach, if you're able to design buildings, man, are you like an architect? Like that level designing? Or are you talking about like, I'm building this beast? You know? Regardless, you don't have to answer that question. You don't have to give away any details you don't want to. But I actually think it's kind of smart, because if you gave, like, from a pure business perspective, if it was like, hey, if you're one of our apartment dwellers, we're going to give you, 20% off or whatever the heck it is of your storage, because you know that for as long as that person is living right there, they're going to pay for that storage, and they're going to keep that bill going, because you're one business, you can just tie the bill together, right? Easy peasy. It's like an easy add-on of guaranteed customers, as opposed to, like, when you have one of the biggest problems. I used to have a friend who worked in storage, so I'm kind of familiar with this. One of the biggest problems they run into is people would forget to pay as soon as their cards expired, and then you're dealing with loss of income and space is carried, and eventually, yeah, you're gonna blow out their storage unit and all that kind of stuff. All the stuff we see in storage wars and all that fictional garbage that's saying it's real. But really, what you want is you want those customers there long term. Or maybe it's one of those things where you just go, hey, if you're a customer here, here's this price you get now, and that price will never change, even though our storage price naturally is going to go up a small amount every year, right? We'll just always keep it at this price, because we know you're a long-term tenant, or whatever the heck it may be. It naturally behooves us to loop those things together, because it's just a little icing on the cake there. Not only we have you as a tenant, but we also have you as a storage customer. I don't know. I think it's smart. Plus, so many storage places are like, they're not very tall. They're very flat and broad. Very few of them are built up. So it makes sense to have your storage below and then build up above it. It's kind of like what they do here very commonly is they have, businesses on the lowest level, and then they put everything above it. And usually it's like restaurants for the most part. And sometimes they're like kitschy, weird shops, things like that. But that's what I see most of the time over here in the suburbs of Seattle. Redmond, especially. If you're familiar with the Redmond area and you live in Washington, you know that, like, that's like everything in that area now. It kind of disgusts me, because it's not what I remember Redmond being as a kid. And I'm like, this is not Redmond anymore. This is like weird metro hell. Old-fashioned whiskey. I like whiskey. I like old fashions. What a coincidence. I don't know if it's the Florida water, but my tanks with Hygger lights are spotless, and my tanks with fluval lights turned down to 30-40%, with 5% blue, has the most algae growth. Interesting. It could be a matter of the difference in the LEDs is doing something. It's so hard to tell, right? But that's such an interesting observation. About how many tanks do you have, Whiskey? I'm curious, like, what's the split of the Hygger lights versus the fluval lights? Like, oh, it's this tanks. Is there any difference in the size of tanks too? Like, are the fluvals only on big tanks, and then the Hygger lights are only on small tanks, right? Because the swings in water parameters can be different depending on gallonage and all that kind of stuff. I'd be curious. That's like the weirdest fun science experiment in my brain right now. Yeah, it makes the brain click and wants to know. Whip. I used a big stone to build up the back corner of my 120-gallon high. Everything else is sand and gravel. The pocket will have a base stratum capped with sand, gravel mix, and egg crate. Should I reconsider order? I don't think so. I don't think there's any problem with that. The only thing that you might consider is, instead of a singular large rock, if you have a bunch of like smaller, that lava rock like we talked about earlier, you could put it in media bags, and that will help the flow of water continue through that area by opening it up some. But by having that big rock there, it should minimize compaction. So, egg crate on the bottom to make sure not everything's on the glass. Everything above it seems okay. Seems okay, if you were to ask me. I'm in it. You're an engineer. Cool. Got you. So you're doing the actual engineering side of it. Very cool. I don't know. I think that's like sweet. Chibi Faith. Oh, it's my wife. Hello, wife. She's not feeling very good. I had to run to CVS on my way home to get her some medication to help out. We all caught like some kind of stomach bug, and just at different times. It is when it hit the hardest. It hit me really hard, like Sunday evening through Monday morning. Not fun. Now she's dealing with the worst of it. Tail end of yesterday into today. Is the worst. Anyway, 3 10 gallons with the Hygger lights. Okay. So what size are the tanks that have 3 10 gallons of 40-gallon breeder, 75-gallon with Hygger lights, and then all 29 gallons with the fluval? Interesting. So your taller, thinner tank from a dimensional perspective is the fluval, and your wider tanks, or just naturally smaller footprint in general, are all Haiger. Huh. That's fascinating. It could just be because of what, like, the natural mineral content that is in the much harder Florida water. That natural, like, warmer cast of light might just cause your local algae that's in your water to do better, right? Because it's got that big Florida sun all the time, compared to there might be a slightly cooler cast on the Haiger lights, or just less blue light in general present that's preventing it. Who knows? There's a lot of like interesting ways you could dig into that and play with it and experiment if you really wanted to. And I'm the kind of crazy that would. But I'm not in Florida, and I'm never going to live in Florida. I'm going to be honest, I've visited Florida once. I don't plan on ever going back. Although I will say, the Garden Eater, Grant, was reaching out to me at one point to potentially go talk at his club. And other than I was like, hey man, it's really expensive for me to travel. And he's like, oh, we cover travel. And I'm like, no. I don't think you understand. It's really expensive for me to travel. Like, I can't sit in economy. I'm a wide boy. I need a bigger chair. I have to sit first class. So that's one of the reasons I don't travel very often is I only fly first class right now. But we're working on that. We're down some poundage. We're doing well. We're losing weight. It's nice. It's slow, steady. But I left there 27 years ago for a reason. Oh, ghosted boy. God, no. But for me, it was mostly just how humid and hot it is. I don't do well in high humidity. Like, when I was in Kentucky, I mean, I loved Kentucky. Do not get me wrong. But I lost 17 pounds in a week just sweating out there. Just sweating my brains out walking around. And, I mean, it was great because I kept it off, and that felt nice, right? It was like, have a week vacation, also lose 17 pounds of weight, and keep it off. Great. Maybe I need to go back to Kentucky more. Ah! Oh, man. Beto Great Lakes. Is one uplift tube enough for a 33-gallon long underground filter custom built? Okay. Yes, no. I know. The worst answer possible. Let me explain. Are you doing any other water flow to help? Because you do have that naturally very long, right? Because the 33 long is 4 foot long. Are you doing anything else to help make the water move around the tank? If the answer is yes, then what I would do is have the natural, like, air input and flow over here on the same side that water is being pushed away from. That way, the water is circulating, and as it hits the far edge, it comes down, and that light amount of flow can help pull it under and go through the under gravel section. Realistically, me personally, I would probably do 2. I would do 1 on each end, just to play it safe. Because that's going to make sure I have more in general movement of water through the substrate, because you are dealing with that really long, thin, natural tank size. I personally would just do 2. Play it safe, make it easy, helpful. Hope that helps. James Handy, 4 foot needs to. Nothing needs anything. It prefers to. It's me being a semantic asshole. No, I mean, I would say personal preference would be 2, maybe even 3, but that's because I'm a psycho and I love movement of water in my aquariums. I don't like very still water. Some fish do, but those aren't the type of fish I keep. I keep all the fish that like lots of water movement. Rainbows love movement, man. All right, let me see here. I want to make sure I didn't miss something. You have plenty of time, guys. Got questions at Bentley Pasco. Makes it easy for me to see. For you members who are here, if you didn't see it, there's a community post out now. Go check that out. It's for members only. It's my way to say thank you to a bunch of you folks. Because many of you have been very, very generous over the time when I don't do S for members in the grand scheme of things. except like a couple of bad phones if you know the right places. Amazon pancakes. Have you ever thought of getting the old, larger Metaframe aquariums? Seen a few larger ones recently. Such a cool piece of history. So my general problem with them, realistically, if I could do it, I would move completely away from glass tanks. Because then I basically never have to worry about seals. And the biggest problem with all the old Metaframe tanks is, yes, they look very, very cool, but you're dealing with sealing issues very, very constantly in those things unless you're really good. And I'm just not that very good at resealing tanks. I learned that from a history of trying to reseal several tanks that I thought were really cool, and I never did them well enough. So for me, my paranoia would be, unless it had like the old kind of like almost tar, it's like a tar resin thing. It wasn't like silicone that they used to use. Those really old ones, but those are really hard to find. And in general, because I keep rainbows, I need larger tanks. So finding a large Metaframe tank becomes kind of hard. Now you could kind of like faux build one by just taking a current day tank and like doing some DIY stuff to it to give it that look. But yeah, I like the way they look. I really do. But realistically, if I was going to go for some kind of more appealing look to a tank, I would probably do something where I was putting either like faux rock as a border, right? To make it look like you were looking into like a little lake or something. Or I would do like wood grain. Because I love wood grain personally. I basically should have been an adult in the 70s when every house had wood grain everywhere. I would be happy as can be because I love wood grain. I'm a weirdo, if that wasn't obvious. Okay. Vibes. Best care for Tiger Lotus, Dwarf Lily, like substrate, fertilizer, CO2. They certainly like a little bit of CO2. They want a good... They do a lot of feeding at the root level, so they want good nutrition within the substrate. It doesn't necessarily mean that you need an aqua soil, but they need some way to have nutrition at their roots. And then beyond that, most of it is just light. All your lilies like good light, but a lot of them are just going to build all their things up to the water surface anyway and start getting some atmospheric CO2 along with that. But yeah, you don't really need specific substrate. Some water fertilization is good. You kind of want a mixture of a little bit of water column fertilization, but you really want like root tabs or just a phenomenally good substrate that's going to pull lots of stuff out of the water down to it. Because they do, I would say like 80% of their feeding. I mean, this is not scientific. I'm just like kind of giving you an example to get an understanding. A majority of their nutritional uptake is done through the roots. So you really want to have something that makes sure that there is plenty of nutrition at their roots constantly, which root tabs does that really, really well. And good substrate can help, but is not necessary. You could have a bunch of lilies growing in just basic inert gravel if you were giving them root tabs. It wouldn't be as effective as, say, like aqua soil, but it would work. Nabokov fan, no more crazy weather today. Knocks on wood. We had 2 volcano eruptions and several shaky things since last time. Yeah, that doesn't sound fun at all. No, I do not want. Your washing machine is on the auto water change? That's interesting. uh, okay, well, hold on. Whip. I had angels in a washing machine. They did fine there until my water went sideways. Now everything is dying. What? Do you have a picture or a video of this somewhere, Whip? Because this just sounds like a LSD fever dream to me. What? What did you do? How did you convert it? I am so confused, man. It's either that or you just like effing with me, which would make sense. My brain's kind of fogged. All right. Nabokov fan. My favorite filtration setup was a 75-gallon with 2 hobs in each compartment. If you know, you know. And then I had 1 of the Zis Bubble Bio in the middle and 2 on each side. The corridors used them Like, assuming they love that to death, just all that much water would make sense. Still battling hair allergy. Can I send you an email? Yeah, James, go ahead. I'm sorry. I've been between real life stuff and the number of emails I've been getting for Aquarium 911. I'm very behind on email. Very, very behind. But yes, you always email. I'll just warn you I'm a little slow. I'm trying to play some catch up. I'm going to try and... I think part of this weekend, I was hoping to batch film a bunch last weekend, but then I got feeling like absolute garbage during the time I was going to film. So that got shot right out the window. But I'm hoping over the next couple of weekends to get a bunch of filming in and get to a point of where hopefully I can do like 2 Aquarium 911s a week and try to play like some pseudo catch up. I don't know if it's going to properly catch up, but it has, thankfully, the number of emails has slowed down a touch. So that's good. Robert Johnson, when does the U.S. get the new fluval lights? I know the Aqua Sky is pretty widely available, and I think the plant is starting to become available in some places. But I think the Aqua Sky has hit like your Petco's, your PetSmarts, all your bigger box stores at this point, which means it should be more widely available. I'm not sure about the plant. Like, I don't have a plant 4.0 in my hands yet. It's coming soonish, I think. Or at least that's what I've been told. Or indicated to. Maybe I should say indicated to. Because until there's like a shipping label, I don't know for certain, right? But I'm supposed to be getting one kind of soon, and then I'll play with that as well as the Aqua Sky. So I got to figure out what tank I want to like do testing with that light. It's probably going to replace a like Plant 3.0 on just a tank that already had one, but we'll see. I got to figure that part out. I got to figure out what is a good testing place for that light and get to work on it. Because if the Aqua Sky is evidence of the similar upgrades to the plant, I'm going to be very, very thrilled at some of the things that can be done, because there's a lot of cool upgrades and features that are quite handy. Quite handy. Yeah. So, yeah. Just basically my statement is soon? Question mark? Some places might already have it. I know, like, Europe and everybody got it already, which makes me kind of sad that we don't have it yet, but yeah. Noticing that, like, depending on the angle I put my face at, my beard looks, like, way uneven. It's like, oh, man, I'm really bad at shaving this thing cleanly. The little things you notice about yourself when you're not, like, you know, with your glasses off, blind in the morning, barely awake. I have to laugh at this stuff. If I don't laugh at it, it gets scarier instead. Whips World. Third opinion if you want another question. I have a 210 gallon. Fish are mostly dying off, slowly turning into boomerangs. We, my channel, talked about this on Saturday, and consensus is parasites, but turning into boomerangs. So you're getting a bunch of like bent spines this way, or like vertical curvature. Whip, why you do this to me? Well, I'm gonna start looking stuff up now. Start looking at videos on your channel. Auctions. Let's get tanked. What am I looking for? Is it in lives as opposed to standard videos, Whip, that I'm gonna have to start looking at? Both, but mostly down. So, in my experience, it's not always parasites that does that. It depends on the fish. Because like rainbows will do that over time naturally. That's just them getting old. But sometimes there are parasitic issues that can cause that in a lot of fish. It wasn't an actual washing machine. A 210 had a wave maker, 3 AC 110s, 2 Marineland 360s, and an FX6. Okay, yeah. So lots of water. Holy God, lots of water. Going all over the place. Do you have, like, pictures or video of this problem that are in your stream of what the fish look like? Because it would help me to look at this directly. I want to be very clear. I don't know that I say this enough. I am the absolute worst person you could probably go to on the whole of FishTube to diagnose fish disease. And yet, I get so many emails about fish disease. One of the reasons why I'm the worst, as should be evident by James asking me about algae issues, half the time it takes me like a month to get to people's emails because of the amount of like random garbage I get, and they get kind of lost in the muck. Right now, they're getting kind of lost in the muck. It sucks, and I feel bad about it. Yeah, I would say in general, if you are dealing with disease problems, the Aquarium Co-op forum might be the best place to go because people are like there like crazy, and there are a lot of people who know way more than I do when it comes to fish disease that are helping out very, very fast. Nabokov fan is one of those people. He's very, very regularly active and helping people on the Aquarium Co-op forum, and sometimes uses the super secret powers to like stir me awake and make me come look at something. But thankfully, he doesn't do that too often because I would start ignoring it otherwise. I've had a few times where people have had direct questions, and he has used the bat signal to call me in, and it's like, okay, I'll weigh in a little bit. Oh man. But yeah, I would honestly like, whether you like Corey or not, and in general, I want to be very clear. I like Corey. I like his business. I just don't like some of the things that they do for products now that they've kind of changed their way, and like everything and its mother is sourced out of China. That's just something I don't like, but that's because I'm very small business centric. And that's when it starts feeling like Amazon and not like a small business, and that gives me the heebie-jeebies. But several other products like that Magic Small Fish Feed, now that it's been renamed, now we've got past that problem, it's great food. I buy it regularly. I use it constantly with my guppy tank. It's great. I use that food more than any other food in my guppy tank. I, in general, like the sponge filter base, not the sponge itself, but I know they're bringing out a finer one, which will probably make me happier, along with the jet lifter tube they have, because it does a much more efficient job of that compared to most of the other ones, until you start looking at like the Swiss tropical ones, and those are crazy expensive. And for each like one Swiss tropical ones, you need like 3 co-op ones. That just doesn't make any sense in my head. That kind of price difference is ridiculous. The fine sponge is out. That also shows you like how unkept up I am with things that are going on. Like I don't watch a lot of fish creation content right now. Do you know who I watch most religiously, and that's about it? Just Aquarium Domain. And that's because I want to live vicariously through that man's ridiculously large DIY projects. Because I could never do them myself, because I'm like DI dumb. There's no do it yourself. I'm do it with somebody else. I'm hire someone to do that kind of nonsense person, because I'm just not that. I'm not that handy human being. I'm a technical. I'm not handy, right? I like Corey. He seems pretty open with it. Yeah, and that's the thing. Like when they were having failure problems, and this is my biggest compliment I'll probably ever pay. That's not true. A lot of their staff and their customer service. Second one. Second tier compliment is that when they're having problems and they pull a product, they tell you exactly why they pulled the product. You would not see any other company do that. They would either be like, "Oh, well, we built an upgrade." Yeah, or whatever. Like when they were no longer getting their lights, they just told us like the factory in China is just no longer going to build them, so we can't get them. So we need to find a new one. It means we got to go through the product design process again. I appreciate that. I really like that he's also been like kind of playing into 3D printed stuff and making like a lot of like little custom extras. I really like that. Although personally, there is a guy on Etsy that makes his own stuff that I really like a little bit more, but Corey's like doing stuff very specific to what he does and then products he sells, and I appreciate that because I think it's just like it adds in software we would refer to this as quality of life. These are little upgrades that bring big increases in like your either ease of doing something or quality of doing something, right? And that to me is a very good like level of add-on and customer value. And I'm a customer of Aquarium Co-op. Let's be clear. Like, I've used Easy Green forever, and I still use it. Even if I hate the pump head on the bottle because it clogs up all the damn time on the reformulated version. But that's because I use dehumidifiers constantly in all my fish room, and it's gonna do that. Whips World. Jeremy's a good man. I talk with him frequently, and once we get going, it's often several hours later before we hang up or my phone dies. Yeah, dude, I love Jeremy, man. That guy's so cool. He's such a good dude. I had so much fun just sitting and talk with him at Keystone Clash. And he keeps, like, regularly bullying me to go to another one, and I'm probably going to have to, if only just to sit in person with him and just bullshit. Because he's so fun to talk to. And he's just such a good person. Plus, we share a little, like, other career-sided thing. Like, we both are in the tech world in one way, shape, or form. So we can babble about kind of both our hobbies and our careers. It's fun times. Fun times. All right, let me make sure I didn't miss something. Nabokov fan, do you have any Panox right now? Nope. Basically, the only plecos I have are Ancistrus. I'm not... How do I put this? I would probably never be the guy... I thought originally at one point I was going to do some like bigger pleco breeding projects, and really the only thing I care about is having zebra plecos again. And that's about it. I like plecos from a... how they can assist a tank, as opposed to purely like being a pleco super fan. That's the other Bentley, Alyssa Bentley. She's like the pleco wonder kid as far as I'm concerned in this area. No, do not bark. Do not bark. You are fine. Lay back down. Hi. Hello. You don't need to bark. I know we're at the end of stream, but you don't need to bark just because the boy downstairs is a butt and likes to bark at everything under the sun. How's your wife, Chibi Face Hands, are doing after? She's doing really good. The only thing she's dealing with, and this is something that, from what we've researched and talked to also our surgery team, happens typically upwards of a year after surgery through recovery, is she'll she'll occasionally, I need to use the right words and not let my brain be dumb. She'll occasionally feel this kind of like pressure pain, so to speak, and pain is kind of lightly. It's just more like this pressure that kind of goes in through certain fingers. And that's just a matter of, it's a very slow process of healing everything now that that pressure has been relieved in the wrist itself. It kind of like manifests is the best way to explain it in some of the rest of the extremity. But it's typically kind of short-lived in the sense that it's gone within, 20, 30 minutes or so, but it can be kind of annoying when she's doing something. But it's just one of the things that said, hey, that typically can take upwards of about a year to go away. If for some reason it doesn't go away after that period of time, then please come in and see us, because like we'll want to see what's going on. But like her scars from surgery and all that kind of stuff, they've healed phenomenally well. Lots of people kind of get these like big raised bumps when they have that surgery. Hers are basically perfectly flat. She's taken such good care of them and followed everything to a T, to the point of where they're phenomenal, and she's doing very, very good. She's playing lots of her games. We have a couple other things coming up that we're working on together that'll be fun. And when we get those out and about, where it's me included, I'll put them up on like the community tab. For those of you who care about the gaming side, you can check it out. But yeah, she's doing great. She is doing great, other than being a little sick right now. News update. Earth appears to be developing new, never-before-seen human-made seasons, study finds. You don't say. Yeah, it's a thing, man. It's a thing. Whip. It's 1 time 2, which is weird. Jack Dempsey and Pike bending down. Green Texas bent sideways. Red Terraface swelled up. Salvini. See, that's what you get for all them weird South American bigger cichlids. You stop with that. There's somebody else who's having discus problems. Let me get back to that. Amazon pancakes. Over the last 7 years, I've lost 7 of my discus. I figured out the remaining 5 I've had for about 5 years now. Realizing the size when I purchased them for 5, remaining are about 9 years old. Oh, interesting. I don't have a ton of experience with discus. The biggest thing that I know is often when people encounter problems is they're not keeping them warm enough, or the water quality is not good enough, because they really are sticklers for good water quality when it comes to being in an aquarium, because you don't have the amount of water flow naturally occurring like you do in the rivers to kind of flush the problems away to where they just never encounter them. But yeah. Beto, Great Lakes, have you ever tested BCB bags? No, and I don't ever plan to. I'm gonna be brutally honest about this. I know it's over past time usually, but I'll go into this because I get so many. Small rant coming. Replay crew, if you're still here, I appreciate you. Thank you very much. Small rant coming. I get so many people that come in, and it's usually one of two videos that they find me somehow, and especially people who are huge fans of Kevin Novak, and they will tooth and nail fight in favor of plenums and anoxic filtration and all, and they'll talk about how wonderful their anoxic tank is. And every time I end up having to have the same comment, and it's getting to a point of where it's like driving me vaguely crazy because, and I know this is just part of the internet and being a content creator, right? Is just like, you always deal with this stuff. I think even like Corey and KG Tropicals have both talked about this recently, where it's like you feel like you almost have to redo the same video once a year because you get so many questions about it, right? But it's like, oh, it's so great and blah 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 and and no, it's amazing. It does all these things, and it's like, cool. Show me it doing that without plants in it, because the stipulation that has been put forward by Novak in the past is that whether it's BCB or the plenum, either of the two, not that it requires both, right? And maybe he started revising that in recent videos. I don't freaking know. I don't care. If you want to do an anoxic tank, you should not be watching my channel to learn about an anoxic tank. I'm not the person that has the big verse or background or preachiness, one might say, of anoxic filtration. Go to the person that has the most experience and preaches the most about anoxic filtration. Whether or not you or I like that person. I have had some positive experiences with Kevin Novak, and I've had some negative experiences with Kevin Novak. And this is my statement. I will stand on this hill for an eternity. He has never once shown an aquarium with 0 plants running anoxic filtration, quotation marks, running anoxic filtration, that naturally denitrifies the water without any other necessity, even though the claim in many of his older videos is that they are a natural denitrification process, that anoxic bacteria will naturally denitrify your aquarium, meaning that it will take nitrates and convert them out of being nitrates. So that in theory, if you combined aerobic bacteria and anoxic bacteria, you could have a completely bare tank and never have the nitrates climb to where they become toxic. He's never provided any data, and he's never shown me a tank that does that over time, which is why I did that experiment. And guess what we saw? Doesn't can do it. It needs the plants. The plants are doing all the denitrification, which to me means that the only reason you have a plenum or a BCB is because it makes you feel better. Now, I can justify a plenum for the purpose of encouraging water movement through the substrate, especially if you have lots of root feeding plants, because that helps oxygenate the roots. It keeps them healthy. It will grow better, more robust root systems, and it will help naturally bring an amount of nutrition down into the roots of plants that need them. But it's the plants that are doing the damn denitrification. And until you show me data otherwise, bullshit. In an aquarium, I want to be very clear. You can tell me all day long it happens in a pond that is such a significantly larger scale of water system that it is not a fair comparison to an aquarium. I'll even let you do it in a big aquarium. You can do it at 240 gallon. But the scale of a 240 gallon to a multiple 1,000 gallon pond is completely effing different. And to say otherwise is foolish. That is literally a complete misunderstanding of basic levels of biology. I'm not a scientist, and I understand this premise. Because I can do frickin' math. Right? Math ain't hard on this one. One, 40-gallon tank. Other, 4,000-gallon pond. Well, the water dilution is going to be a lot different. And it doesn't matter if the pond's got koi in it, and koi make a lot more mess. By gallonage, by water dilution, there is so much more going on. And so much more space to do things, that the potential of that occurring is higher. But I will say this, I've never seen a koi pond that uses anoxic filtration that isn't using a bog filter, that doesn't have plants. Because guess what's doing all the cleaning? Even in aquarium domains system, he has a robust number of plants, and they do an amazing job in his tank. What a coincidence. Turns out, nature's best consumer of the entire nitrogen cycle is a plant. Who'd have effing thunk? Now, I understand that people like the system, and I've got no problem with that. That's great. However, until I see data, bullshit. Bullshit. Because the scientific papers that have been written about it, they're all at much larger scales than a regular aquarium, ladies and gentlemen. We will end our rant now. Can you use a plenum? Can you use it on a gravel filter? Absolutely. And there's lots of benefits to using them. But do not assume that that alone will denitrify your aquarium at the scale that most of us have aquariums. Old-fashioned whiskey. What is he a doctor of anyway? Well, he'll never tell you. He also won't tell you where his doctorate comes from. I mean, brother, I got a doctorate in bullshit from the University of Go F Yourself. Does that make me a doctor? Should I start putting out there Bentley Pasco, PhD of BS? I worked in marketing. I can spin some bullshit all day long. But I'm not going to spin that kind of bullshit without having data to prove it. And the only reason, I will tell you this right now, the only reason that I will get this uppity about it, is because when I had talked about this a long time ago, where I personally could not say that in my experience, a plenum would naturally denitrify, is because I had not personally seen a tank without plants that has done it, that has naturally fought algae and denitrified, and data to prove it, or just been given a data set that shows me, like, here's our control, here's the tank with plants, here's the tank without plants, here's the BCB, here's the plenum, whatever the heck, right? Whatever, how you collect that data that shows, like, here's how this works. And I said that, and I tried to be as polite and nice as possible about it by basically just saying, I cannot say with my experience that it does occur, because the only time I've seen those systems, they all include plants. And plants will, by nature, denitrify your water. So I can't say for certain that the plenum is the one doing the denitrification. I feel like that is the most politically nice way to say, I don't know. Until I see data, I don't know. I'm a test guy. I like data. And then someone sends an email to Novak. I don't care who you are. It's not about you doing it. Whoever sent the email, whoever you are, I don't care. That doesn't bother me. He went on a rant in a video for like 20 minutes. And at one point called me an idiot. Listen, I'm usually pretty humble about things. But you deign to insult my intelligence in any fashion after you say, I did not watch the video, but I received this email. We're far enough in. I'm going to take the polite filters off. If you cannot take the time to watch the thing, to understand the direct words coming out of a person's mouth, you, sir, are a fucking moron. An ignoramus. A simpleton. One would call dumb fuck. But what do I know? I was raised in a hot rod shop. And I don't have a PhD. I'm just a simple guy who really loves this hobby and believes in data. And without data, I cannot say that my experience will say this does occur, because I've never seen it happen, and I don't have data that shows, hey, this is how it works. Look at the data. See how it happened? Here's all the things that you would do in a simple scientific method to prove that it functions. And then in comments, when I go to a comment and clarify what I said, trying to be polite. Because I very frequently, whenever I got questions about anoxic filtration, would tell people, go watch Kevin Novak's channel. He's the one with the experience, not me. If you want to learn about it, go learn from him. I did that for years. Years. This son of a bitch went on a tirade in the comments. It's still there in the video. I could go find it if I really felt like it. About how who knows what aquarium company I work for, and I'm clearly trying to steal his research by asking for a simple data set. Not the entirety of his research, just one data set. One little data set. That can go, hey, okay, look, no, I've seen data, it works. It's right here, here's the data, it works. And that I would need to pay him for his research. When I have sent countless people to his channel, which by nature makes him money. Might not be a lot. We're all small YouTubers. We don't make a lot of money. We do this mostly for fun. Uh-huh. Now, with all that being said, come at me, homeboy. Unlike you, I was basically born on the fires of the internet in the deepest, darkest recesses. I fear no mother trucking evil. I am the evil. My gaming history is something special. Let me tell you. In my early days on the internet, nowadays those are considered crimes. There's a reason I work in tech with no degree. I'm gonna just put that one out there. I'm good at what I do. Good at what I do. Anyway, folks, I want to say thank you. Appreciate you all for being here. I hope you have enjoyed this edition of Bentley Rants. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your week. Oh, no. Beto, no, I'm not. I have no offense to you at all. I want to be very, very clear. Let me go back to that. No offense to you at all. No, you're not bad at all. You're asking a legitimate question because I have played with undergravel filtration, right? And I like undergravel filtration for reasons that are not anoxic, right? Because I have not been able to prove that anoxic functions. But when I get some data that shows it does, cool. But I've seen countless number of other people replicate what we have been told is supposed to create an anoxic environment, not cause natural denitrification. However, I have a tank with an undergravel system in it right now, and I like it. And in a certain perspective, I have pondered whenever I can build my dream fish room about putting every tank on an undergravel filtration system. I feel like that should speak volumes about my personal belief about whether or not I think undergravel is good. But it's not for the purposes of natural denitrification. It's mostly for air-driven water quality because it gives very, very clear water on an air-driven system. And if you do use a lot of the plants that I like to use, crypts especially, it brings all that lovely nutrition down to their roots. And it makes them happy. And that's a good thing. Bam. Unedited member rants. Maybe if I get enough like random things in my head that I want to like pop off about, we could do that. We could do that. I might be as we internet children sometimes say, down to clown. All right, gang. From one internet idiot to all you wonderful people, thank you so much for watching, and stay awesome. Who knows what's gonna happen next week?